Human medic saves dying alien beast. Grateful owner is the galaxy's most feared Empress. Reaches its climax when Everett and Cora confront the treacherous Director Terrace aboard Princess Vex's captured flagship. In a breathtaking, zero-gravity battle, Everett's medical expertise and Cora's combat prowess unite to defeat the consortium forces, capture their leader, and forge an unprecedented alliance that will save the Kree species from extinction. The Colonial Alliance military transport vessel shuddered as another electromagnetic pulse from the storm ripped through its hull. Lieutenant Everett braced himself against the medical bay wall, watching the vital signs of his patients fluctuate with each new disturbance. The ship had been diverted from its original course to the Frontier star system due to unusual stellar activity, forcing them to navigate through this treacherous purple atmosphere of an uncharted planet. Medical Bay. This is Captain Torres. How are our wounded holding up? The voice crackled through the intercom, barely audible over the howling winds battering the ship's exterior. Everett pressed the comm button. Stable for now, Captain, but I don't like these power fluctuations. My equipment keeps cycling on and off. Understood. Engineering reports the shields are at 40% and dropping. We've got to... Torres' voice cut off as another violent shudder ran through the vessel. Warning lights flashed red across every console. Everett felt his stomach lurch as the artificial gravity faltered momentarily. He quickly secured himself to the nearest medical bed, strapping in just as the ship lurched again, this time with a sickening metallic screech that told him something critical had given way. "All hands, prepare for emergency landing," Torres' voice boomed through the shipwide system. "This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not." The world became a chaotic blur of alarms, screams, and the thunderous roar of a spacecraft being torn apart. Everett's last conscious thought was of the wounded Marines in his care as darkness claimed him. Pain was his first sensation upon waking. Dull, throbbing pain across his ribcage and a sharp sting above his right eye. Everett blinked away blood as consciousness returned in fragments. The medical bay was now a twisted cavern of bent metal and shattered equipment. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow over the wreckage. "Captain Torres?" he called out, his voice hoarse. No response. With effort, Everett freed himself from the restraints that had likely saved his life and conducted a quick self-assessment. 3 cracked ribs, a laceration above his eye, and various contusions. Painful, but not life-threatening. His military-grade medical implant was still functioning, sending diagnostic data directly to his neural interface. He struggled to his feet and began searching for survivors. The forward section of the medical bay had been completely severed from the rest of the ship. Through a gaping tear in the hull, he could see the alien landscape, jagged rock formations under a swirling purple sky. The ship had come to rest in what appeared to be a ravine, partially sheltered from the ongoing electromagnetic storm. "Anyone alive? Sound off!" Everett moved methodically through the wreckage, checking for signs of life. The 2 Marines who had been under his care were dead, their vital signs flat on his medical display. Of Captain Torres, there was no sign, likely in the forward section of the ship, which was nowhere to be seen. A low, pained growl stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't human. Cautiously, Everett followed the sound to a damaged cargo container that had broken open during the crash. Inside, partially pinned beneath a fallen support beam, lay a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It resembled a massive feline, but with 6 powerful limbs and skin that seemed to shift colors like an octopus. Currently, it was a mottled pattern of distressed reds and oranges. Its chest heaved with labored breaths, and a viscous blue fluid, blood, he presumed, pooled beneath its hindquarters. One of its massive fangs had broken off, and a deep gash ran along its flank. Everett recognized it immediately from the mission briefing. A Vorak, one of the prized alpha predators being transported to the frontier colony as part of a breeding program. These creatures were worth millions in colonial credits, specially bioengineered for resilience in hostile environments. And this one was dying. Training took over. Everett retrieved his emergency medical kit from the wreckage and approached the wounded beast carefully. His neural implant automatically began scanning the creature, attempting to match its physiology with known xenobiological data. "Easy there, big fellow," he murmured, keeping his voice low and steady. "I'm going to help you." The Vorak's 6 eyes, arranged in a horizontal line across its broad skull, focused on him with startling intelligence. A warning growl rumbled from its chest. "Lieutenant Everett, Colonial Marine Corps, medical officer." He continued speaking as he edged closer, hoping his tone would convey his peaceful intentions, if not his words. "You're badly hurt. That beam has crushed your pelvic structure, and you're losing blood." As he reached out with a medical scanner, the air around him suddenly charged with energy. Everett froze as the hairs on his arms stood up. Something was wrong. "Step away from the Vorak, human." The voice came from behind him, melodic yet cold, speaking perfect colonial standard with an accent he couldn't place. Slowly, Everett turned. Standing in the torn opening of the hull was a figure that seemed to belong more in a nightmare than reality. Tall and slender, with skin the color of burnished copper, and eyes that glowed an unearthly amber. She, for despite the alien features, the figure was unmistakably female, wore what appeared to be living armor, shifting and adjusting to her movements like a second skin. In one hand, she held a weapon that hummed with energy. "I said, step away." The weapon raised slightly. Everett raised his hands slowly. "I'm a doctor, a healer. This creature is dying." "I am aware." Her eyes narrowed. "The Vorak belongs to me?" Understanding dawned on Everett. This wasn't just any alien, the armor, the commanding presence. He was facing royalty of some kind. And the Vorak wasn't cargo. It was a pet. "Then you should know it needs immediate medical attention," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I can help. Your kind caused this." Her free hand gestured to the wreckage. "Your ship violated our territorial space. You crashed on sacred ground. I apologize for the intrusion, but right now, that's not important. What's important is saving this creature's life. Will you allow me to treat it?" The alien's gaze shifted to the wounded Vorak, which let out another pained growl. Something like concern flickered across her features. "Our healers are coming," she said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Everett's medical implant was feeding him real-time data on the Vorak's condition. "It won't survive that long. The internal bleeding is severe. I need to operate now." For a long moment, the alien regarded him silently. Then, with a fluid motion, she lowered her weapon. "If Vorak dies, so do you," she said simply. "I am Empress Cora of the Korean Empire. This beast is my most valued companion. Save him, and perhaps I will spare your life." With those words, she stepped aside, allowing Everett access to his patient. He wasted no time, retrieving what equipment he could salvage from the wreckage. Everett prepared for field surgery under the most challenging conditions imaginable. His neural implant would help guide him through the alien anatomy, but much of this would be improvisation. "I need to administer a sedative and stabilize that beam before removing it," he explained as he worked. "Can you tell me anything about Vorak physiology that might help?" Cora approached cautiously, her armor making soft clicking sounds as she moved. "Their blood contains copper instead of iron. Their organs are arranged differently from yours." She pointed to specific areas of the creature's body. "Heart here, 3 lungs here, and here. The beam has crushed one of them. 2 livers, both there." Everett nodded, updating his mental map. "Thank you. That helps." He prepared a universal sedative, adjusting the dosage for what he estimated to be the creature's body mass. "I'm going to put him to sleep now. Then I'll need to remove that beam and stop the bleeding. As he worked to save the Vorak's life, Everett became vaguely aware of other aliens arriving, guards in similar living armor, speaking in rapid musical tones to their Empress. Cora never left his side, watching his every move with those unnerving amber eyes. The surgery was grueling. Twice. The Vorak nearly died on his makeshift operating table. Everett worked tirelessly, his hands steady despite the alien environment and the pressure of Cora's watchful gaze. He removed the crushed lung, sealed ruptured blood vessels, and stabilized the creature's broken pelvis using a combination of colonial medical tech and improvised solutions. "The bone structure is remarkable," he commented during a brief pause to adjust his equipment. "Almost crystalline in nature." "Vorak bones are stronger than your strongest metals," Cora replied. There was a hint of pride in her voice. "They are apex predators, evolved to hunt in the harshest environments. Yet, surprisingly delicate internally," Everett noted. "The organ systems are complex, highly evolved." He glanced at her. "How long have your people kept them as companions?" "Vorak choose their companions," she corrected him. "They are not pets or possessions in the way you might understand. This one chose me when I was barely of age. We have been bonded for 20 years. "A special relationship, then." Everett returned his attention to the surgery. "I think I've stopped the worst of the bleeding. Now to repair what I can of the internal damage." Hours passed as Everett worked, occasionally requesting assistance from Cora, who proved to be surprisingly knowledgeable about Vorak anatomy. Eventually, the critical phase of the surgery was complete. The Vorak was stable, though still unconscious. Everett stepped back, finally allowing himself to acknowledge his own exhaustion and pain. His ribs throbbed, and dried blood still caked his face. "It's done," he said, wiping his bloodied hands on a scrap of clean fabric. "I've done everything I can. The rest is up to him." Cora studied the sleeping Vorak, then turned her gaze to Everett. "You have skills our healers do not. They would have failed where you succeeded. Different training, different approaches," he replied diplomatically. "I'm sure your healers excel in areas beyond my understanding." She made a sound that might have been acknowledgement. "Come. You require attention for your own injuries and sustenance. Vorak will sleep until morning." Everett hesitated, reluctant to leave his patient. "I should monitor him." "My guards will alert us if his condition changes," Cora interrupted. "You have earned rest, Lieutenant Everett of the Colonial Marine Corps." Something in her tone told him this was not a suggestion, but a command. Everett nodded and followed her from the wreckage into the alien landscape beyond. Outside, he got his first clear view of where they had crashed. The ravine was part of a vast rocky formation that stretched to the horizon in all directions. The purple sky had calmed somewhat, though electrical discharges still flickered among the clouds. In the distance, a massive structure rose from the rocks, a building or perhaps a ship, its architecture fluid and organic, utterly alien. "Your ship crashed in the sacred canyons," Cora explained as they walked. "Had you landed anywhere else, you would have been destroyed immediately by our defensive systems." "Lucky us," Everett murmured, then gestured to the distant structure. "Is that your home?" "That is the Sovereign's will, my flagship. We detected your vessel when it entered our atmosphere, and were tracking you before the crash." Several other Krians flanked them as they walked, their armor shifting colors to match the surrounding terrain. Everett noted their weapons, energy-based, far more advanced than colonial technology. "What about the rest of my crew, Captain Torres?" Cora's expression remained impassive. "We have search teams looking for survivors. So far, none have been found." The words hit Everett like a physical blow. He had known, rationally, that the chances were slim, but hearing it confirmed made it real. He was alone on an alien world, surrounded by a species that until now, humanity had only heard rumors of. The Krians were known to be reclusive and territorial, rarely engaging with the interstellar community except through carefully controlled diplomatic channels. "Your captain may yet live," Cora added, perhaps sensing his distress. "The forward section of your vessel has not been located." They reached a smaller craft, some kind of shuttle, nestled among the rocks. Its design matched the larger ship in the distance, with the same organic, flowing lines. As they approached, a section of the hull simply melted away, forming an entrance. "Our temporary base during my hunt," Cora explained. "It will serve until we return to the Sovereign's will." Inside, the shuttle was a marvel of biotechnology. Surfaces pulsed with soft light, and what appeared to be living consoles responded to the touch of the Korean operators. Everett was led to what he assumed was a medical chamber, where a Korean in different garb awaited. "This is Healer Kale," Cora introduced. "He will attend to your injuries." Kale was shorter than the others, with skin more bronze than copper and eyes that seemed more curious than hostile. He gestured for Everett to sit on a raised platform that resembled a medical bed. "Your treatment of the Vorak was unexpected," Kale said as he examined Everett's injuries. "Our approach would have been different." "How so?" Everett winced as the healer applied something cool to his laceration. "We would have prioritized the neurological systems over the cardiovascular. Vorak can survive significant blood loss, but are vulnerable to neural damage." Kale's long fingers worked with practiced precision. "Yet your method was effective. The creature will recover." "I worked with what I knew," Everett admitted. "Human and Vorak physiology are different, but some principles are universal." Kale made a sound that might have been agreement. "The Empress values the beast greatly. You have earned her consideration. Few humans can claim as much." The healer's treatment was swift and effective. Everett's laceration closed without a scar, and the pain in his ribs subsided to a dull ache. Whatever technology the Koreans possessed, their medical science was clearly advanced. After treatment, Everett was provided with sustenance, a nutrient-rich liquid that tasted better than it looked, and shown to a small chamber where he could rest. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded him. His mind raced with questions about his situation, the fate of his crew, and the strange twist of fate that had placed him in the hands of the Korean Empire. Hours later, a soft chime alerted him. The wall of his chamber became transparent, revealing Cora standing outside. "The Vorak is awake," she said simply. Everett rose immediately, following her back through the shuttle to where they had left the wounded creature. To his surprise, they exited the shuttle and returned to the crash site. The Vorak had been too large to move safely, so they had left it where it lay, though now the area was protected by some kind of energy field that kept out the elements. As they approached, Everett saw that the creature was indeed conscious. Its 6 eyes tracked their movement, and its coloration had improved, shifting from the distressed reds and oranges to a calmer pattern of blues and greens. "How do you feel, big guy?" Everett asked softly as he knelt beside the Vorak. He checked the improvised bandages and was pleased to see minimal seepage of the blue blood. The Vorak made a rumbling sound deep in its chest, not unlike a cat's purr but magnified tenfold. One of its 6 limbs twitched, as if attempting to rise. "Easy," Everett cautioned. "You're not ready to move yet. Those bones need time to knit." To his surprise, the creature seemed to understand, settling back down with a huffing sound. "He understands you," Cora remarked. "Intelligence transcends species," Everett replied, continuing his examination. "Pain and relief are universal languages." He glanced up at her. "He's doing remarkably well, considering the extent of his injuries. Another day of rest, and we can think about getting him moved somewhere more comfortable." Cora nodded, then gestured for Everett to join her a short distance away, out of earshot of the other Koreans who were monitoring the site. "You should know that your presence here complicates matters," she said, her voice low. "I was on a ceremonial hunt when your ship crashed. Such hunts are private affairs, away from the politics of court. My absence from the capital has created opportunities for those who oppose my rule." Everett frowned. "I don't understand. How does saving your Vorak factor into court politics?" Vorak are more than companions to Korean rulers. They are symbols of power and legitimacy. Had he died, it would have been seen as an omen, a sign that my reign was ending. Her amber eyes fixed on him intently. "By saving him, you have directly influenced the stability of the empire." The implications were not lost on Everett. "So I've made both friends and enemies without even trying." "Indeed." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "My sister, Vex, leads the opposition. She will not be pleased to learn that a human has preserved my position, however inadvertently." "Your sister wants your throne." "She believes she would be a more suitable empress, more aggressive in our dealings with other species, less inclined toward diplomacy." Cora's expression hardened. "She would see your colonial alliance as a threat to be eliminated, rather than a potential ally to be cautiously engaged." Everett processed this information, understanding that he had stumbled into a complex political situation far beyond a simple crash landing. "What happens now? To me? I mean, for the moment, you remain under my protection as reward for your service. When we return to the Sovereign's will, I will decide your ultimate fate." She paused. "However, there is another matter that requires your attention first." "What's that?" "During your surgery on Vorak, your scanning equipment detected something unusual in his bloodstream, a toxin or pathogen of some kind. You mentioned it briefly, but were focused on the immediate injuries." Everett nodded, remembering. "Yes, there was something my scanners couldn't identify. I assumed it was normal for Vorak physiology." "It is not." Cora's voice had taken on a new urgency. "Healer Kale has examined the data from your equipment. He believes it may be a bioweapon, a designer pathogen specifically targeted at Vorak biology." The implications were chilling. Someone tried to assassinate your companion? Or you, by proxy? Perhaps. Or perhaps it is something more sinister. She looked back toward the sleeping Vorak. "Whatever it is, it appears to be spreading. Kale detected trace amounts in my bloodstream as well, transmitted through the bond I share with Vorak." "A species-jumping pathogen?" Everett's medical training immediately kicked into high gear. "That's incredibly sophisticated and dangerous. If it can jump from Vorak to Cryon, what's to stop it from affecting humans or other species?" "Nothing, potentially. Which is why I need your help again. Lieutenant, your medical technology is different from ours. Perhaps together, we can identify and neutralize this threat before it spreads further." Everett didn't hesitate. "I'll need access to whatever medical equipment survived the crash, and samples from both Vorak and you for comparison." "You shall have whatever you require." Cora turned to leave, then paused. "And Lieutenant, this matter remains between us for now, until we know the source of the pathogen. We cannot know whom to trust." With that ominous warning, she left him to continue his examination of the Vorak, whose peaceful slumber gave no indication of the invisible threat lurking within. Over the next several hours, Everett worked alongside Healer Kale in a makeshift laboratory within the Korean shuttle. The collaboration was awkward at first. Two medical professionals from vastly different traditions, forced to find common ground. But as they worked, a grudging respect developed between them. "Your scanning technology is remarkably precise," Kale commented, as they examined blood samples from both Vorak and Cora. "Our instruments are more attuned to energy patterns than molecular structures." "Different approaches to the same problems," Everett replied, adjusting his scanner. "Your understanding of biochemical bonds is far beyond ours." Together, they isolated the pathogen, a synthetic nanoparticle that attached itself to specific genetic markers present in both Vorak and Korean DNA. It was dormant in its current form, but designed to activate under specific conditions. It's a time bomb, Everett explained, showing Cale the molecular structure on his scanner. See these receptor sites? They're waiting for a catalyst, probably another compound that would be introduced later. When they connect, the pathogen activates and begins rewriting genetic code. Cale's expression darkened. Genetic degradation, a slow death that would appear natural, aging accelerated 1,000-fold. Exactly, and nearly impossible to trace back to its source once activated. Everett looked up from the scanner. This isn't just an assassination attempt. This is genocide in a bottle. If released widely, it could affect every Vorak and potentially every Cryan. We must inform the Empress immediately. They found Cora in communication with her flagship, her expression tense as she spoke with a commander whose holographic image flickered before her. "Ge cannot delay any longer. Majesty," the commander was saying. "Princess Vex's fleet has moved into position around the capital moon. They are demanding your immediate return to address the council. Tell my sister that I will return when my hunt is complete. Commander Zephyr." "Not before." Cora's tone was ice. "Majesty, Chancellor Voss believes the princess will interpret any delay as a sign of weakness. There are rumors that you have been injured or killed. Then send them proof of my continued existence." Cora's patience was clearly wearing thin. "This conversation is over, Commander." The hologram flickered out, and Cora turned to find Everett and Cale waiting. "What have you discovered?" They explained their findings, showing her the molecular structure of the pathogen and its potential effects. As they spoke, Everett noticed a subtle change in Cora's demeanor, a tightening around her eyes, a slight paling of her copper skin. "You've already been exposed," he realized aloud. "You're feeling the effects." "A mild fatigue. Nothing more," she dismissed. "But yes, I suspect the pathogen has begun its work in me, even without the catalyst you described." "Which means someone has already introduced the second compound into your system," Cale said grimly. "Someone close to you." "Vex." Cora's voice was barely above a whisper. "This explains her sudden boldness, her certainty that my reign is ending." "We need to develop a counteragent," Everett insisted. "Something to neutralize both compounds before they can complete their work." Cora shook her head. "There isn't time. If what you say is true, the genetic degradation has already begun, and not just in me, potentially in every Kriean who has had contact with Vorak beasts." "Which would be primarily the royal court and military leadership," Cale added. "Those most likely to support your rule." The political implications were staggering. By targeting the Vorak, Vex had effectively ensured that Cora's power base would literally die off, leaving the opposition to fill the vacuum. "There might be a way," Everett said slowly, an idea forming. "Human medical science has dealt with genetic degradation before, in our own development of bioweapons and their countermeasures. If I could access the colonial medical database, I might be able to adapt one of our stabilizing agents to Kriean physiology." "Your ship's database was destroyed in the crash," Cora pointed out. "Yes, but the emergency beacon would have transmitted our position to Colonial Command. Standard procedure is to send a rescue team within 48 hours. If they arrive, they'll have access to the full medical library." "If they arrive," Cora echoed. "And if my sister doesn't destroy them the moment they enter our space?" A chime sounded, and one of the Kriean guards entered with urgent news. "Majesty, we've detected multiple ships entering the atmosphere. They bear the markings of Princess Vex's personal fleet." Cora's expression hardened. "So she comes to finish what she started." She turned to Everett and Cale. "Gather what you need. We leave for the Sovereign's will immediately." As they hurried to collect their equipment and samples, Everett made a decision. "I need to bring Vorak with us. He's the key to understanding how this pathogen works and how to stop it." "Vorak is too weak to be moved," Cale objected. "Then we'll stabilize him for transport. But he has to come with us." Everett locked eyes with Cora. "Trust me on this, Empress. Your life and his are linked in more ways than one now." After a moment's consideration, she nodded. "Prepare him for transport, quickly." The evacuation was chaotic. As they worked to secure Vorak for the journey, the first explosions rocked the canyon. Vex's forces had begun bombing the area, either unaware or unconcerned that their Empress was below. "She must believe I'm already dead," Cora said as they loaded Vorak onto a hovering medical platform. "Or perhaps she simply no longer cares." They raced for the shuttle, bombardment continuing around them. Just as they reached it, a direct hit struck nearby, sending debris raining down. Everett threw himself over Vorak's unconscious form, protecting the creature from the worst of it. As the dust settled, he became aware of a warm wetness spreading across his back. One of the debris fragments had pierced his uniform, embedding itself between his shoulder blades. "Lieutenant!" Cora was at his side instantly. "You're injured!" "Get Vorak on board," he grunted, pain lancing through him with each breath. "I'll manage." With Kale's help, he staggered onto the shuttle, collapsing onto one of the medical platforms as the vessel lifted off, accelerating rapidly away from the bombardment below. As they ascended, Everett caught glimpses through the viewports of the attacking ships, sleek, predatory craft with the same organic design as Cora's vessel, but marked with crimson insignia. "Princess Vex's personal guard," Kale explained, as he worked to remove the debris from Everett's back. "The most fanatically loyal of her followers." The journey to the Sovereign's will was mercifully brief. Despite the shuttle's speed, they came under fire several times, shields flaring as enemy weapons found their mark. But the flagship's formidable defenses provided covering fire, allowing them to dock safely in what appeared to be a massive hangar bay. Everett, now patched up by Kale but still in considerable pain, helped oversee the transfer of Vorak to the flagship's medical facilities. The Sovereign's will was unlike any vessel he had ever seen. A living ship, parts of it seemingly grown rather than built, corridors that shifted and changed as they moved through them. In the medical bay, a team of Korean healers awaited them, along with what Everett assumed were high-ranking officials, judging by their elaborate armor and deferential behavior toward Cora. "Majesty, Princess Vex has declared you unfit to rule," one of them reported as soon as they entered. "She claims you have been corrupted by alien influence and must be removed for the safety of the Empire." "How convenient for her," Cora replied dryly. "And the Council?" "Divided, Majesty. Chancellor Voss has rallied support for you, but many are swayed by the Princess's claims, especially with your prolonged absence." "Then we must give them proof of my fitness." Cora turned to Everett and Kale. "You will address the Council. Show them what you have discovered about the pathogen and its source." Everett blinked in surprise. "Me? Address an alien council?" "You are the only one they might believe," Cora explained. "An outsider with no stake in our political struggles, who nonetheless possesses crucial information." Before Everett could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A Korean officer rushed in, his armor shifting to alert colors. "Majesty, we are under attack. Princess Vex's fleet has opened fire on the Sovereign's will. Our forward shields are failing." Cora's expression didn't change, but Everett saw her hands clench at her sides. "So be it. If my sister wants war, she shall have it." She turned to her officers. "Prepare for battle, but target weapons and propulsion systems only. These are still our people, however misguided." As the officers rushed to carry out her orders, Cora addressed Everett and Kale once more. "Continue your work on the counteragent. If we survive this battle, we will need it more than ever." With that, she swept from the medical bay, her living armor shifting to a more militant configuration as she went. Left alone with Kale and the unconscious Vorak, Everett felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just a stranded medical officer trying to survive. He had become a key player in an alien civil war, one that could potentially reshape the political landscape of an entire empire. We need to work fast, he told Kale, pushing aside his own pain and exhaustion. If those ships breach the Sovereign's Will's defenses, everything we've learned dies with us. The Korean healer nodded grimly. Where do we begin? With Vorak. His immune system is fighting the pathogen naturally, slowing its progress. If we can isolate the compounds his body is producing, we might be able to synthesize a treatment. As they worked, the flagship shuddered periodically under enemy fire. Status updates came through the ship's communication system, none of them encouraging. Vex's forces were numerous and had the element of surprise on their side. The Sovereign's Will was holding its own, but the battle was far from decided. Hours passed as Everett and Kale made progress in fits and starts. The colonial medical officer's expertise in human genetic stabilization techniques proved valuable, while Kale's intimate knowledge of Korean biology allowed them to adapt those techniques to their current crisis. It's the bond, Everett realized as they examined Vorak's bloodwork. The psychic connection between Vorak and Cora. It's why the pathogen affects both species. It's targeting the neural pathways that form that connection, which explains why it affects the royal court most severely, Kale added. The stronger the bond with a Vorak, the more vulnerable the Korean becomes. And Vex, does she have a Vorak companion? Kale shook his head. She rejected the tradition, claiming it made rulers weak and dependent. Now we see it was part of a larger plan. Their breakthrough came when Everett identified a specific protein in Vorak's bloodstream that was actively neutralizing the pathogen. It wasn't enough to stop the progression entirely, but it was slowing it significantly. If we can synthesize this protein and introduce it to affected Koreans, we might be able to buy enough time to develop a permanent cure, he explained. Just as they were preparing to test their theory, the medical bay doors slid open, and Cora entered. Her armor was scorched in places, and a thin line of blue blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. But her bearing was as regal as ever. The battle goes poorly, she announced without preamble. Vex has disabled our main weapons array and communications. We are effectively blind and mute. But still alive, Everett pointed out. For now, she approached Vorak, laying a hand on the creature's flank. How is he? Stable, and more importantly, fighting the pathogen naturally. Everett explained their findings, showing her the protein they had isolated. With your permission, we'd like to synthesize this compound and administer it to you as a first test case. Cora didn't hesitate. Do it! As Kale prepared the treatment, another officer entered the medical bay. Majesty, Princess Vex is hailing us. She demands to speak with you. Put her through, Cora ordered. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the medical bay. Princess Vex bore a striking resemblance to her sister, with the same copper skin and amber eyes. But where Cora's expression was controlled and measured, Vex's features were animated with barely contained rage. Sister, Vex's holographic form sneered. How kind of you to finally acknowledge me. You are firing on the sovereign vessel of your Empress, Cora replied calmly. Explain yourself, Vex. I need no explanation beyond the obvious. You are unfit to rule. Your policies of isolation and caution have weakened the Empire. Your precious diplomatic channels have gained us nothing, while other species expand their territories to our very borders. And your solution is civil war? Vex smiled, a cold expression devoid of warmth. My solution is renewal. The old ways have failed us. It is time for new leadership, new vision. By poisoning the Vorak? Cora's voice remained even, but Everett saw her hands clench at her sides. By introducing a genetic pathogen that targets not only them, but any Korean bonded to them? For the first time, Vex's confidence seemed to falter. What nonsense is this? We have identified the bioweapon in Vorak's bloodstream, Cora continued. A designer pathogen that causes accelerated genetic degradation. It has already spread to me, and likely to every member of the court who maintains a Vorak bond. including Chancellor Voss and Commander Zephyr, your supposed enemies. Lies, Vex hissed, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. See for yourself, Cora gestured, and Kale transmitted the data they had gathered to Vex's ship. Examine the molecular structure. This is not natural disease. This is targeted genocide. As Vex studied the data, her expression shifted from disbelief to shock, and finally to horror. This was not my doing. I sought to discredit you. Yes, to force your abdication. But this... She looked up, meeting Cora's gaze across the void of space. Sister, whatever our differences, I would never condemn our entire species to slow death. Then who? Cora demanded. Who else benefits from the fall of both of us? A terrible understanding dawned on Vex's face. The consortium. They approached me months ago, offering support for my claim. Advanced weapons, intelligence on your movements. She swallowed hard. They said they had a way to ensure a peaceful transition of power. I assumed they meant political leverage, not this. The consortium. Everett had heard of them even in colonial space. A shadowy alliance of rogue states and corporate interests that profited from instability and conflict across the galaxy. If they had infiltrated the Korean Empire, the implications were dire. It seems we have a common enemy, Cora said after a long moment. One that has played us against each other while setting the stage for our mutual destruction. Vex's hologram flickered as her ship took fire, not from the Sovereign's will, but from one of her own fleet. Betrayal! The consortium ships are attacking! Break off your assault on my vessel, Cora ordered. Join forces with us to repel these traitors. Agreed. Sending coordination data now. Vex's image stabilized as she issued rapid commands to her forces. But, sister, what of the pathogen? If what you say is true, we are already dying. Not necessarily. Everett stepped forward, entering the holographic field. Princess Vex, I am Lieutenant Everett of the Colonial Marine Corps. We've isolated a compound that may slow the progression of the pathogen, buying us time to develop a permanent cure. Vex stared at him in disbelief. A human? You trust the word of a human in matters of Korean biology? This human saved Vorak's life, Cora replied, and may yet save us all. I suggest you put aside your prejudice long enough to listen. As the flagship shuddered under renewed assault, now from consortium vessels, Everett quickly outlined their findings and the treatment they proposed. Vex listened with growing understanding, her scientific knowledge evidently as sharp as her political acumen. It could work, she admitted reluctantly. But mass production of this protein would require facilities we don't have immediate access to. The Colonial Alliance does, Everett interjected. My people have extensive experience with genetic stabilization technology. If we can make contact with them, request emergency aid? Absolutely not, Vex cut him off. We cannot reveal our weakness to another species. We cannot afford pride, sister, Cora countered, not with extinction as the alternative. A tremendous explosion rocked the Sovereign's will, throwing Everett against a bulkhead. Alarms blared as emergency systems engaged. Direct hit to our central power core, an officer reported. Shields failing. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. We have no choice, Cora declared, steadying herself. Lieutenant Everett, can you establish contact with your people? If I can access your communications array, yes, but I'd need to boost the signal to reach colonial space. Do it. Cora turned back to Vex's hologram. Sister, I am calling a formal ceasefire between our forces. Will you honor it? Vex hesitated only briefly before nodding. I so swear, by the ancient bonds. Our quarrel is suspended until this greater threat is addressed. Then, let it be recorded. Cora's formal tone completed what Everett realized was a binding oath in Korean tradition. Now, coordinate your fleet's defense with Commander Zephyr. We must hold the consortium at bay long enough for help to arrive. As Vex's hologram winked out, Cora turned to Everett. Come, I will take you to the communications center myself. Kale, continue synthesizing the protein. Administer it to Vorak and to me as soon as it's ready. They hurried through the chaotic corridors of the flagship, crew members rushing to battle stations or working frantically to repair damaged systems. Everett was struck by the discipline and focus of the Kreans, even in crisis. A warrior culture with an ingrained sense of duty. The communications center was a marvel of biotechnology, with what appeared to be living consoles pulsing with energy and information. Several operators worked feverishly to maintain what remained of the ship's external sensors and communication capability. Clear the main array, Cora ordered. Give Lieutenant Everett full access. The operators looked startled, but complied immediately. Everett approached the alien technology with a mixture of awe and determination. His neural implant would help translate his intentions to the unfamiliar interface. But this would still be challenging. I need to configure this to transmit on colonial emergency frequencies, he explained as he worked, and boost the signal strength significantly to reach their nearest outpost. Whatever you require, Cora assured him. Our fate now rests in your hands, Lieutenant. No pressure, Everett thought wryly, as he immersed himself in the task. The Krean technology was responsive once he understood its basic principles, which seemed to rely as much on intention as on physical input. Within minutes, he had established a connection to the Colonial Emergency Network. This is Lieutenant James Everett, Colonial Marine Corps, medical officer from transport vessel, Echo 7, he transmitted. Declaring Code Prometheus. Repeat. Code Prometheus. Coordinates to follow. Code Prometheus, the highest emergency protocol in colonial space, reserved for first contact situations that could lead to interspecies conflict. It would trigger an immediate response from the nearest colonial fleet, bypassing the usual bureaucratic channels. Signal acknowledged, one of the Krean operators reported. Response incoming. A voice crackled through the alien speakers, distorted, but understandable. Lieutenant Everett, this is Captain Reyes of the colonial vessel Horizon. We've been searching for Echo 7 since receiving your distress beacon. What is your situation? Everett felt a surge of relief. Captain, I am currently aboard a Krean Imperial vessel, the Sovereign's Will. We are under attack by consortium forces and facing a biological threat that could destabilize the entire region, requesting immediate medical and military assistance under First Contact Protocol 7. There was a pause before Reyes responded. Understood, Lieutenant. We are approximately 6 hours from your position at maximum speed. Can you hold out that long? Everett looked to Cora, who nodded grimly. We'll have to, Captain. Transmitting details of the biological agent now. We need your medical teams ready to synthesize a stabilizing compound upon arrival. As he sent the data on the pathogen, another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered, and several consoles went dark. We've lost auxiliary power, an officer reported. Weapon systems operating at 30% capacity. Lieutenant, Cora said urgently, we may not have 6 hours. Everett turned back to the communication array. Captain Reyes, situation deteriorating rapidly. Any chance of accelerating your arrival? We'll push the engines to their limits, Lieutenant. Hold tight. Horizon out. As the connection closed, Everett and Cora exchanged looks of grim determination. They had a chance, slim, but real. Now they just had to survive long enough to seize it. They returned to the medical bay to find Kale administering the synthesized protein to Vorak. The massive creature was conscious now, its 6 eyes alert despite its weakened state. The initial results are promising, Kale reported. His cellular degradation has slowed significantly. I've prepared a dose for you, Majesty. As Cora received the treatment, a holographic communication activated in the center of the room. Commander Zephyr's image appeared, his armor scorched and damaged. Majesty, the consortium forces have disabled Princess Vex's flagship. They are boarding as we speak. Cora's expression hardened. And my sister? Unknown, Majesty. Communications were cut moments ago. Prepare a strike team, Cora ordered. We will not abandon her to the consortium. Majesty, with respect, our own situation is critical. We cannot spare. That was not a request. Commander. Cora's voice was steel. I will lead the team myself. Everett stared at her in disbelief. Empress, you can't risk yourself like that. The treatment hasn't had time to fully stabilize your condition. She is my sister, Lieutenant. Whatever our differences, blood binds us. Cora's amber eyes met his, a challenge in their depths. Would you do any less for your kin? He couldn't argue with that. Then I'm coming with you. You are not a warrior. No, but I am a doctor. And if Vex has been exposed to the pathogen, she may need immediate treatment. He straightened, ignoring the pain from his own injuries. Besides, I've come this far. Might as well see it through. A smile, the first genuine one he had seen, touched Cora's lips. Very well, Lieutenant. Prepare yourself. We leave in 10 minutes. The strike team consisted of Cora, Everett, and 6 of her elite guards. They boarded a small assault craft that detached from the Sovereign's will, speeding toward Vex's disabled flagship. Through the viewports, Everett could see the ongoing battle. Kriean vessels engaged with ships of unfamiliar design, energy weapons flashing against the backdrop of space. The consortium has been planning this for years, Cora explained, as they approached. Infiltrating our society, exploiting the political division between my sister and me. We were blind to the true threat. Why would they want to destabilize the Kriean Empire? Everett asked. Resources, territory, power. Cora's expression was grim. Our empire controls key hyperspace lanes and rare element deposits. With both Vex and me eliminated, and our people weakened by the pathogen, they could install puppet leaders, or simply take what they wanted with minimal resistance. The assault craft docked with Vex's flagship, attaching itself to a hull breach created during the attack. As they prepared to board, Cora handed Everett a weapon, a smaller version of the energy pistol her guards carried. I assume colonial military training includes basic combat skills? Everett checked the unfamiliar weapon, quickly understanding its operation. Yes, Empress, though I prefer healing to hurting. As do all wise beings, she replied. But today, we may need both skills. They breached the ship through the damaged hull section, entering a corridor filled with smoke and flickering emergency lights. The signs of battle were everywhere, scorch marks from energy weapons, bodies of Kriean soldiers, and unfamiliar humanoids in sleek black armor. Consortium mercenaries, Cora identified the latter, hired guns from a dozen species, united only by greed. They moved through the ship, encountering pockets of resistance that the guards dispatched efficiently. Everett found himself impressed by Kriean combat tactics, fluid, almost dance-like in their precision, yet devastatingly effective. They reached what appeared to be the flagship's command center to find a standoff in progress. Princess Vex, wounded but defiant, stood surrounded by consortium forces. A tall, pale humanoid with cybernetic enhancements seemed to be in charge, a cruel smile playing on his lips as he held a weapon to Vex's head. Ah, Empress Cora, how kind of you to join us, the cybernetic being greeted them. Now we can conclude our business efficiently. Director Terrace, Cora replied coldly. I should have known the consortium would send its chief architect of chaos. Chaos, no. Empress. I prefer to think of it as creative restructuring. Terrace gestured with his free hand. Your empire has been stagnating under your cautious leadership. The consortium merely wishes to help it reach its full potential. By introducing a genetic plague? By turning sister against sister? Cora's voice was controlled fury. Your vision of potential is nothing but death and subjugation. Terrace shrugged. Necessary steps in evolution. The strong survive, the weak perish. Surely a species with such a proud warrior tradition can appreciate that. During this exchange, Everett had been scanning the room, noting positions, angles, potential cover. His neural implant provided tactical overlays, a feature he rarely used in his medical work, but now found invaluable. He caught Cora's eye briefly, giving an almost imperceptible nod toward a control panel near Vex. If he could reach it. Cora seemed to understand. She took a step forward, drawing all attention to herself. What is it you want, Terrace? To kill us both? To watch our empire tear itself apart? Initially, yes, Terrace admitted casually. But plans evolve. Now I think having both sisters alive, but compliant, would be more useful. The pathogen has already done its work. Soon, your entire ruling class will be dependent on consortium-supplied treatments just to survive. You underestimate Krian resilience, Vex spat, despite the weapon at her temple. Do I? Your flagship is disabled. Your sister's vessel is barely functional. Your combined fleets are being decimated as we speak. Terrace's cybernetic eye glowed with malicious satisfaction. Acceptance would be the wiser course. Perhaps, Cora conceded. Then, almost casually, Lieutenant, your assessment? It was the signal Everett had been waiting for. In one fluid motion, he dropped to one knee, aimed the energy pistol, and fired, not at Terrace or his men, but at the control panel near Vex. The panel exploded in a shower of sparks, triggering emergency systems. Gravity in the command center suddenly failed, plunging everyone into weightlessness. In the confusion that followed, Cora's guards moved with practiced precision, having clearly trained for zero-gravity combat. Everett pushed off from his position, sailing across the chamber toward Vex. Terrace, momentarily disoriented by the sudden shift, lost his grip on the princess. Everett collided with Vex, pulling her away from the consortium leader and behind a console for cover. Stay down, he ordered, administering a dose of the stabilizing protein he had brought with him. This will slow the pathogen's progress. You're the human doctor? Vex looked at him with a mixture of suspicion and grudging respect. My sister's new pet. Currently saving your life. So maybe hold the contempt? Everett replied as he completed the injection. How do you feel? Like I've been shot, poisoned, and betrayed. Despite her words, Vex managed a grimace that might have been a smile. But still alive, thanks to you. Around them, the battle raged in 3 dimensions. Cora moved through the zero-gravity environment like a dancer, her living armor adapting to the conditions, propelling her with precision as she engaged Terrace directly. Her guards methodically eliminated the consortium forces, their energy weapons leaving clean, cauterized holes in their targets. Everett, protecting Vex, found himself facing a consortium mercenary who had circled behind their position. With no time to aim properly, he fired the energy pistol on instinct. The shot went wide, but distracted the attacker long enough for Vex to launch herself upward, a hidden blade extending from her armor as she drove it into the mercenary's throat. Not bad for a dying princess, she remarked as she pushed the body away. Across the chamber, Cora had Terrace cornered, her weapon trained on his cybernetic heart. Your plan has failed, Director. The Colonial Alliance has been alerted to your biological weapon. They're sending forces as we speak. Terrace's artificial smile never faltered. One battle doesn't end a war. Empress, the consortium has patience. We'll simply adapt our approach. Not this time. With cold precision, Cora fired her weapon, disabling Terrace's cybernetic systems rather than killing him outright. As he floated helplessly, she turned to her guards. Secure him. He will stand trial for crimes against the Krian people. With the command center secured, gravity was restored, and Everett helped Vex to a seated position against one of the consoles. Her wound was bleeding, a deep gash across her side where armor had been breached. "Let me look at that," he offered, reaching for his medical kit. "Later," Vex dismissed. "First, tell me the truth about this pathogen. Can it be stopped?" "With the Colonial Alliance's help, yes," Everett assured her as he examined the wound anyway. "They have experience with similar bioweapons. The protein treatment I just gave you will buy time, but a permanent cure is possible." "And the price for this colonial assistance?" Vex's amber eyes, so like her sister's, fixed on him with penetrating intensity. "That's for your leaders to negotiate. But speaking as a doctor, I'd say preventing genocide is its own reward." Cora joined them, kneeling beside her sister. Despite their conflict, genuine concern showed in her expression. "How serious?" "She'll live," Everett diagnosed, "though she might wish otherwise during recovery." "Always the optimist," Vex muttered, then looked at her sister. "The Sovereign's will? Still fighting, as are your loyal ships." Cora placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. "We've been fools, Vex, playing into the consortium's hands with our rivalry." "Perhaps," Vex winced as Everett applied a sealant to her wound. "Or perhaps our people needed to see what true external threat looks like to remember the strength of our bond." A communication chime sounded, and one of the guards activated a holographic display. Commander Zephyr's image appeared. "Majesty, colonial vessels have entered the system. 3 capital ships and support craft. They are engaging the consortium forces." Relief washed over Everett. Captain Reyes had pushed the Horizon's engines beyond their limits, arriving sooner than expected. The tide was turning. "Establish communication," Cora ordered. "Inform them that we have secured Princess Vex and captured the consortium leadership." Over the next few hours, as the combined Korean and colonial forces drove back the consortium fleet, Everett worked with medical teams from both sides to begin distribution of the stabilizing protein. The colonial ships had arrived with emergency genetic labs already prepared, thanks to the data he had transmitted. The treatment was working. Cases of advanced genetic degradation were stabilized, and colonial medical science, combined with Korean biotechnology, was making rapid progress toward a permanent cure. On the diplomatic front, the crisis had opened unprecedented channels of communication between the two powers, united against a common enemy. 3 months later, Everett stood on an observation deck of the research station Altair, watching as Korean and human scientists worked side by side. The station, once a secret Korean military outpost, had been converted to a joint medical research facility dedicated to countering the consortium's biological weapons. Vorak, fully recovered from his injuries, padded silently up beside him. The massive beast had become something of a mascot for the facility, its remarkable immune system providing key insights into fighting the pathogen. Everett reached down to scratch behind one of the creature's oral receptors, earning a rumbling purr of appreciation. "He grows stronger each day," Cora's voice came from behind him. "As do our people, thanks to you." Everett turned to find both the Empress and Princess Vex approaching. The sisters had maintained their ceasefire, turning it into a formal power-sharing arrangement that had stabilized the Empire. Vex focused on military readiness and security, while Cora handled diplomacy and internal affairs, a balance that played to each of their strengths. "Thanks to cooperation," Everett corrected. "This crisis showed what's possible when different species work together." Indeed. Vex, still reserved, but no longer openly hostile toward humans, nodded in acknowledgement. The consortium never anticipated that their plot would result in a Korean colonial alliance, quite the opposite of their intentions. "They underestimated the power of healing," Cora said, her hand resting lightly on Vorak's flank. "Both of bodies and of relations." Everett smiled, thinking of how far they had come from that crashed medical bay where he had first operated on Vorak. "My commanding officer always said the best weapon against hatred is understanding." Turns out he was right. Speaking of your command, Vex interjected. They've offered you a promotion. Captain Reyes informed me this morning. Chief Medical Officer of the Colonial Frontier Fleet. A worthy recognition, Cora added, though Everett thought he detected a note of something else in her voice. I've been considering it, he admitted. It's a good position, important work. But, Cora prompted, her amber eyes studying him closely. But there's important work here too. The pathogen research is ongoing. The medical exchange program between our species is just getting started. He looked out at the stars, visible through the observation window. Besides, I've grown rather fond of this corner of space. A smile touched Cora's lips. Then perhaps you should consider another offer. The position of Royal Medical Advisor remains open. It would, of course, require extended residence within the Empire. Working directly with the Empress, Everett raised an eyebrow. That could be politically complicated. Politics evolves, Lieutenant, Vex said with surprising diplomacy. As do traditions. Your actions have earned you a place of respect among our people, human or not. Vorak nudged Everett's hand with his massive head, as if adding his own endorsement of the idea. I'll consider it seriously, he promised, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with professional recognition. Later, as the station's cycle shifted to night mode, and most of the staff retired to their quarters, Everett found himself back on the observation deck. The viewport now showed a spectacular view of the galaxy, spiral arms glittering with countless stars. He sensed, rather than heard, Cora join him. Her living armor had been replaced with simpler attire, making her seem less the untouchable Empress and more the person he had come to know during their shared crisis. Your people have a saying, she said after a comfortable silence. In the darkest night, stars shine brightest. Shakespeare, I think, Everett replied, though probably paraphrased. It reminds me of our journey. She stepped closer, her copper skin luminous in the starlight. From crash to cure, from enemies to allies. And beyond, he asked quietly. In answer, she reached out, her slender fingers intertwining with his. The touch sent a current through him, a connection that transcended species and politics and the vast differences of their worlds. The Kree have a saying of our own, she murmured. What begins in storm may end in clarity. From the shadows, Vorak emerged, moving to stand beside them. The creature's colors shifted to peaceful blues and purples as it gazed out at the stars alongside them. Three figures, human, Kree, and Vorak, standing together at the edge of possibility, while behind them, in laboratories and meeting rooms, the future took shape. A future where healing transcended borders, where understanding conquered fear, and where the unexpected bond between a stranded doctor and a galaxy's most feared Empress opened doors, long thought sealed. In the vastness of space, such beginnings were rare, but as Everett had learned, the universe had a way of finding connections where none seemed possible. And sometimes, those connections changed everything.